My perfect sister-in-law was a brilliant surgeon who seemed to support our marriage until my wife suddenly became sick. Memory loss, confusion, episodes of madness. Doctors diagnosed early dementia at age 30. The truth: she was systematically poisoning my wife with psychiatric drugs to steal her from me. My name is Jake, and I'm about to tell you how my seemingly perfect sister-in-law tried to destroy my marriage, steal my wife, ruin my life, and how I exposed her in the most devastating way possible. This story begins 3 years ago, when I was 32, living in Portland, Oregon, working as a successful architect. I had been married to my college sweetheart Emma for 6 wonderful years. Emma was everything I could ask for in a partner: kind, intelligent, supportive, and absolutely devoted to our relationship. We had weathered every storm together, built a beautiful life. We're trying to start a family. Then Emma's sister moved to town. Victoria was 2 years older than Emma, stunningly beautiful, and according to everyone who knew her, absolutely perfect. She was a successful trauma surgeon who had just completed her residency at Johns Hopkins and was starting a position at Oregon Health and Science University. She was brilliant, accomplished, wealthy, and seemed to genuinely care about everyone around her. "I'm so excited Vicky is finally going to be close by," Emma told me when Victoria announced her move. We were inseparable as kids, but medical school and residency kept us apart for so long. It'll be like having my best friend back. I was happy for Emma, though. I'll admit I was a little nervous about having a sister-in-law so close by. Experience having family nearby could complicate a marriage, no matter how well-intentioned everyone was. But Victoria seemed determined to prove my concerns wrong. From the moment she arrived in Portland, she went out of her way to be the perfect sister-in-law. She invited us to elegant dinner parties at her stunning downtown penthouse. She remembered every anniversary and birthday with thoughtful, expensive gifts. She genuinely seemed interested in my work and would ask intelligent questions about my architectural projects. "You're so lucky to have Jake," she would tell Emma regularly. "He's talented, dedicated, and clearly adores you. You two have something really special." Victoria also seemed to go out of her way to support our marriage. When Emma and I went through a rough patch after a miscarriage, Victoria was there with comfort, advice, and practical help. When I was stressed about landing a major commercial project, she used her connections to help me get an introduction to the right people. She even helped us plan a second honeymoon to Italy for our 7th anniversary. "Vicky has been such a blessing," Emma told me, as we walked through the streets of Florence. Courtesy of Victoria's detailed travel itinerary and restaurant recommendations. "I don't know what I'd do without her." I had to agree. Victoria seemed genuinely invested in our happiness, and her presence in our lives had been nothing but positive. She was the kind of sister-in-law every man hopes for: supportive, respectful of boundaries, and clearly devoted to her sister's well-being. But looking back now, I can see that Victoria was playing a much longer, more sophisticated game than I could have imagined. The first sign something was wrong came about a year after Victoria moved to Portland. Emma started having what she called episodes: sudden moments of dizziness, confusion, and memory loss. At first, we attributed them to stress. Emma had been working long hours at her job as a social worker, and we'd been trying to get pregnant again after our miscarriage. But the episodes got worse. Emma would forget conversations we'd had, miss appointments, sometimes seemed genuinely confused about where she was or what she was doing. She'd have splitting headaches that would last for days, followed by periods where she seemed almost euphoric. "I think you should see a doctor," I told her after she forgot about our anniversary dinner, and I found her sitting in our living room at midnight, staring at the wall with a blank expression. "I'm probably just tired," she said, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "Maybe I should take some time off work." Victoria, being a doctor, was naturally concerned about Emma's symptoms. She insisted on running some preliminary tests, drawing blood for analysis, and even arranged for Emma to get an MRI at the hospital where she worked. "I want to rule out anything serious," Victoria told us with the kind of professional concern that made me grateful to have a medical expert in the family. Emma's symptoms could be stress-related, but they could also indicate something more serious. Better to be safe. The tests came back normal, which should have been reassuring. But Emma's episodes continued, and if anything, they seemed to be getting worse. She started having trouble concentrating at work, began calling in sick regularly, and spent more and more time sleeping. That's when Victoria stepped up in a way that seemed incredibly generous at the time. "Why don't you let Emma stay at my place for a few weeks?" she suggested during one of our weekly family dinners. "I can monitor her symptoms more closely, and she can rest without worrying about household responsibilities. Sometimes a change of environment can help with stress-related conditions." Emma was hesitant, but I thought it might be a good idea. Victoria's penthouse was luxurious and peaceful, and having a doctor nearby seemed like the responsible choice given Emma's ongoing health issues. "It's just temporary," Victoria assured me, "just until we figure out what's causing these episodes." Moved in with Victoria on a Tuesday in March. The plan was for 2 weeks. Just long enough to see if a change of environment would help her symptoms improve. Those 2 weeks turned into a month, then 2 months, then 6 months. Every time I suggested Emma should come home, Victoria had a medical reason why it wasn't a good idea yet. "She's still having episodes," Victoria would explain. "Yesterday she forgot where the bathroom was in her own childhood home. Thinks she needs more time to stabilize before she deals with the stress of maintaining a household." Meanwhile, Emma seemed to be getting worse, not better. When I visited her at Victoria's penthouse, she often seemed confused and disoriented. Sometimes she didn't seem to recognize me immediately. Other times, she would be overly affectionate, clinging to me in a way that seemed desperate rather than loving. "I feel so lost, Jake," she told me during one of my visits, tears streaming down her face. "I can't remember things that happened yesterday, but I can remember every detail of conversations from 20 years ago. Something is really wrong with me." Victoria was always there during these conversations, professional and concerned, taking notes about Emma's symptoms and adjusting her treatment plan. She had convinced Emma to take a leave of absence from work and was managing all of her medical care personally. "I think Emma might be developing early-onset dementia," Victoria told me privately after one particularly bad episode. "I know it's hard to hear, but her symptoms are consistent with that diagnosis. The good news is that if we catch it early, we can slow the progression." I was devastated. Emma was only 30 years old. The idea that she might be facing dementia was almost too horrible to contemplate. But I trusted Victoria's medical expertise, as she seemed genuinely heartbroken about her sister's condition. That's when Victoria made a suggestion that should have set off every alarm bell I had. "Jake, I think you need to start preparing for the possibility that Emma might not be able to live independently much longer," she said gently. "Early-onset dementia is progressive. Someone needs to have power of attorney to make medical decisions for her when she can't make them herself." "Shouldn't that be me?" I asked. "I'm her husband." Victoria looked uncomfortable. "Normally, yes. But given Emma's condition, and the fact that she's been living with me, and I've been managing her care, it might make more sense for me to have medical power of attorney. I'm a doctor. I understand her condition, and I'm already coordinating her treatment." Something about this suggestion made me uneasy, but I couldn't put my finger on why. Victoria was Emma's sister. She was a medical professional, and she had been taking care of Emma for months. It seemed logical that she would be the best person to make medical decisions, but I asked for some time to think about it, and that decision probably saved my marriage and my wife's life. Instead of signing the power of attorney papers immediately, I decided to get a second opinion about Emma's condition. I made an appointment with a neurologist at a different hospital, someone who had never met Victoria and could give me an objective assessment of Emma's symptoms. Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed all of Emma's test results and asked detailed questions about when her symptoms had started and how they had progressed. After a thorough examination, her assessment was completely different from Victoria's. "Mr. Rodriguez, I don't see any evidence of dementia in your wife's case," Dr. Chen told me. "Her MRI is normal, her cognitive tests are normal, and her symptoms don't follow the typical pattern we see with early-onset dementia." "Then what could be causing her episodes?" I asked. Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. "The symptoms you're describing, memory loss, confusion, mood swings, could be caused by several things. But given the sudden onset and the specific pattern, I'd want to rule out toxicity. Toxicity. Specific. The symptoms you're describing are consistent with someone being given psychiatric medications inappropriately. Antipsychotics, for example, or certain antidepressants, especially in someone who doesn't need them. My blood went cold. Are you saying someone might be drugging my wife? I'm saying it's a possibility we should investigate, Dr. Chen said carefully. I'd like to run a comprehensive drug screening, test for substances that wouldn't show up in standard blood work. I agreed immediately, and we arranged for Emma to come in for testing the following week. But I didn't tell Victoria about the appointment. Something told me I needed to keep this investigation private. The drug screening results came back 3 days later, and they confirmed my worst fears. Emma's blood contained significant levels of haloperidol, a powerful antipsychotic, medication, and lorazepam, a strong sedative. Both drugs were at levels that would cause exactly the symptoms Emma had been experiencing. Mr. Rodriguez, Dr. Chen said when she called with the results, your wife is definitely being drugged. These medications are not prescribed to her, and the levels in her system are high enough to cause serious cognitive impairment. I felt like the world was spinning around me. Someone was poisoning my wife, making her sick, making her seem mentally ill. But who and why? The horrible truth hit me like a physical blow. Victoria. Victoria was the one with access to these drugs. Victoria was the one who had insisted on managing Emma's care. Victoria was the one who had diagnosed her with early onset dementia and was pushing for medical power of attorney. But why would Victoria want to hurt her own sister? That night, I went to Victoria's penthouse to confront her, but she wasn't home. Emma was there alone, heavily sedated and barely coherent. I helped her get dressed and took her straight to the emergency room where Dr. Chen was waiting for us. Need to get these drugs out of her system? Dr. Chen explained as the ER team started Emma on 4 fluids to help flush the medications from her body. She's been systematically poisoned for months. It's going to take time for her to recover. While Emma was being treated, I went home and called my lawyer. We needed to document everything: the drug test results, Emma's medical records, the timeline of her symptoms. If Victoria was systematically poisoning Emma, we needed evidence to stop her and hold her accountable. But I also needed to understand why. What could Victoria possibly gain from making Emma sick? The answer came from the most unexpected source: Victoria's ex-girlfriend. I was going through Emma's belongings from Victoria's penthouse when I found a letter that had been accidentally mixed in with Emma's things. It was from someone named Rachel, and it was addressed to Victoria. The letter was dated 3 months earlier, and it revealed everything. Vicky, the letter read, I know you think I don't understand your feelings for Emma, but what you're doing isn't love, it's obsession. Emma is straight, she's married, and no amount of manipulation is going to change that. The medications you're giving her aren't helping anyone. They're destroying her mind and her marriage, and when Jake finds out what you're doing, you'll lose Emma forever. Please stop before you do something you can't undo. I still care about you, but I can't watch you destroy someone you claim to love. I read the letter 3 times before the full horror of the situation sank in. Victoria wasn't trying to help Emma, she was trying to steal her. She had been systematically drugging Emma to make her seem mentally ill, planning to get power of attorney so she could control every aspect of Emma's life. She was trying to destroy Emma's marriage and her independence so that Emma would have no choice but to depend on her completely. It was the most twisted, manipulative plan I'd ever encountered. Victoria was willing to destroy her own sisters, mind and life, just to possess her. The next morning I took the letter and all our evidence to the police. Detective Martinez, who handled cases involving domestic abuse and stalking, was horrified by what Victoria had done. This is one of the most calculated cases of psychological abuse I've ever seen, he told me. She used her medical knowledge and her position as a family member to systematically poison and gaslight her victim. The fact that she's a doctor makes this even worse. Victoria was arrested at the hospital where she worked in front of her colleagues and patients. The charges were extensive: assault, battery, unlawful imprisonment, practicing medicine without proper oversight, and attempted fraud regarding the power of attorney documents. But the most satisfying moment came during the trial. now fully recovered after months of treatment, testified against her sister. "Victoria didn't try to help me," Emma said from the witness stand, her voice clear and strong. "She systematically destroyed my health, my marriage, and my sense of reality because she was obsessed with controlling me. She used my love and trust as a weapon against me, and she nearly succeeded in stealing my entire life." Victoria's defense tried to argue that she had been trying to help Emma, that her medical judgment had been clouded by her concern for her sister. But the evidence was overwhelming. The drug tests, the medical records, Rachel's letter, and testimony from other doctors who confirmed that Victoria's treatment had no medical basis. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Victoria was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in prison. She also lost her medical license permanently and was ordered to pay substantial restitution for Emma's medical treatment and therapy. But the real victory was seeing Emma reclaim her life. As the drugs left her system, she became herself again, sharp, funny, loving, and strong. Our marriage, which had been strained by months of confusion and fear, became stronger than ever. "Kept having these moments of clarity," Emma told me as we worked together to redecorate our home, erasing any trace of Victoria's influence. "Moments where I'd remember who I really was, what my life was supposed to be like. But then the fog would roll back in, and I'd lose myself again. It was like being trapped in my own mind." Today, 2 years after Victoria's conviction, Emma and I are happier than we've ever been. Emma returned to her job as a social worker, where her experience with psychological manipulation has made her even more effective at helping abuse victims. We're expecting our first child next month, and Emma jokes that she's going to be the most protective mother in history. Victoria is serving her sentence at the Women's Correctional Facility in Wilsonville. She's been denied parole twice, and according to our victim's advocate, she continues to insist that she was only trying to help Emma. She's never shown any remorse for what she did, which tells me that she would do it again if given the chance. The most chilling part of this whole experience was realizing how close Victoria came to succeeding. If I hadn't gotten that second opinion, if I had signed those power of attorney papers, she would have had complete control over Emma's medical care. She could have continued drugging Emma indefinitely, gradually increasing the doses until Emma was completely dependent on her. Emma would have disappeared into a fog of psychiatric medications, and I would have been told that my wife was mentally ill and needed constant medical supervision. Victoria would have been the devoted sister, sacrificing her own life to care for her sick sibling, and no one would have questioned her dedication. It was the perfect crime, designed by someone who understood exactly how to manipulate the medical system and the trust of a loving family. Victoria used her medical knowledge, her position as Emma's sister, and society's assumptions about mental illness to create an elaborate prison for the woman she claimed to love, but love doesn't try to control, manipulate, or imprison. Love doesn't drug someone into compliance or destroy their autonomy to satisfy your own desires. What Victoria felt for Emma wasn't love, it was obsession, possession, and ultimately, a form of evil that I hope I never encounter again. Sometimes, I think about how different our lives would have been if Victoria had succeeded. Emma would have been trapped in a pharmaceutical haze, dependent on her sister for everything, slowly losing herself until there was nothing left of the woman I married. I would have been the grieving husband, watching helplessly as my wife disappeared into mental illness. Instead, Emma is free, Victoria is in prison, and we're building the family we always dreamed of. Justice was served in the most complete way possible. The predator was stopped, the victim was saved, and the truth was exposed for everyone to see. The woman who tried to steal my wife's mind and soul is now locked away. She'll have 8 years to think about the life she destroyed her own.